Hello there, welcome. Fireside with Peter Adkison. I am Peter Adkison. My co-host is Emma Larkins, and our guest today is Randy Buehler. We are here. We are streaming live on Gen Con TV from the Chaldea Studios, and if you've watched our show before, you know that here we go in search of the untold stories behind your favorite games. And here in Season 2, we are continuing our focus on Magic the Gathering because it's just too cool to limit to one season. And our guest today has a very unique history and perspective on coming into Magic, sort of a unique at the moment when he came on. But let's just hear about that in the context of Q&A. Randy Buehler, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me. It should be fun.
Absolutely. Well, we like to start with getting to know you. Like, who was Randy Buehler before he heard about Magic the Gathering or Wizards of the Coast? Or
was there life before Magic?
Was there life before?
I mean, I was a grad student. I don't know. Does that count? I was a grad student in history, philosophy of science. So I thought I was going to live the life of academia. I have my bachelor's is in physics, my master's is in philosophy.
So spoiler alert, you didn't actually become a psychiatrist.
I did not become a professor.
Or a professor.
It was basically, it was time to sort of pick my PhD thesis topic and lock myself in a library.
Oh, wow.
But all my class notes are like 4 Llanowar Elves, 4 Birds of Paradise. They're all deck lists. All deck lists.
Nice.
Yeah.
But before you got to deck lists, so how did you first hear about Magic? You were a competitive player outside of Magic.
Sure.
Were you not?
I've always been a competitive person.
Yeah.
So the thing that I did as an undergrad, this is before Magic, this is like, 89, I graduated high school. So early 90s, I played College Bowl. It's kind of like Quiz Bowl. It's Team Jeopardy, if you will.
Oh, cool.
So like academic competitions, and you would go to tournaments, and there'd be like 20 colleges would send their team.
And what school were you at?
I went to Vanderbilt.
Vanderbilt
in Nashville, Tennessee. So yeah, we would get together at these tournaments and compete, and that was sort of my competitive outlet. I mean, not exactly an athlete, but I like to compete, so what can I do with my brain?
Did you play like bridge or chess?
Totally played bridge. Never got into tournament bridge, but
I didn't know that was a thing.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
Like competitive bridge?
There.
It's huge. My stepmother plays it all the time.
Nice.
Definitely a thing. So that crowd actually had a gathering. Like one guy would bring a bunch of people over to his house in the summer. And so I go to this house, and it's like 20 nerds descending with buzzer sets and packs of questions to have this trivia competition. I walk in, and there's the kitchen table. There's like 4 or 5 people gathered around the kitchen table, and they're playing something with cards. It's Magic, right?
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
I pull up a chair. It's literally kitchen table multiplayer free-for-all game.
Yeah.
And what year is this, do you think?
I think this is summer 95.
Summer 95.
So I didn't actually get in in 93.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah,
95.
yeah. You're a latecomer.
It's funny.
You are
Everybody,
a latecomer to Magic the Gathering.
I agree. Secretly, it's weird. People are like, "Oh, you've been playing forever. You must have like a 4-digit DCI number." It's like, no, it's 6. Sorry.
It's funny. I had the same thing. I didn't start only with Dungeons and Dragons. I didn't
Really?
start playing Dungeons and Dragons until 1978.
Oh, that's spectacular.
It was like
no,
three-
that's the same thing.
like-
People
like-
think of you as like Mr. D&D, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I was a latecomer to D&D. It was a D&D by the time. I
Latecomer.
missed D&D.
That's
it was
perfect.
a D&D by the time I got into it. Yeah, and actually even starting Wizards of the Coast, I was a latecomer to the industry. I remember, I think of the gaming industry as all the people who had companies or were designers before 1990 as like, oh, those are the old timers. And I'm one of the new kids.
Sure.
But I realize that's not
I got
quite
into
true.
Magic and D&D after those times.
Brag about your youth. Fine, brag about your youth.
Well, so 1995,
Yeah.
summer 95, you're at this retreat.
Yeah.
You see this game. What do you think? What is your first impression?
I mean, it was a strategy game pretty clearly to me. So I mean,
Yeah.
I was initially pretty attracted. I mean, it looked cool. Or one guy had like an if biff Efreet, and he was making all this green mana and damaging people. And like, I think about this in retrospect, their decks were all terrible. Like they were terrible.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So says
it was
Pro
cool.
Tour Player
Right.
of the Year or something like that.
So I pull up a chair. By the end of the weekend, they sent me off to face the world with this all commons deck they built out of just leftover cards.
Okay.
And it's like this black-white pestilence, circle of protection, black deck.
Yeah.
That sounds pretty good.
It was
that sounds
sweet,
probably
right?
better than most of my decks.
Right. So all common deck sent me off to face the world, and then when I got back to grad school, my roommate had like one deck that his previous roommate had abandoned. So like I have a deck, he has a deck, and then just this arms race ensues. And it's like I would buy a couple booster packs, so he would buy a couple booster packs. So I would say, at one point I remember we had the 2 Icy Manipulator detente. Icy Manipulator was too good. Like, we'll both stop at 2. Neither one of us will acquire any more Icy Manipulators.
Yeah.
And for 6 months, I was basically just playing against my roommate. Some of our friends got into it. One friend was into it. Some others got into it.
I love how the history of Magic, like there's these times that were dominated by a card, or maybe a couple cards, and later decks built around them and stuff like that. But it was like, there was the era of Icy Manipulator, where it was just like terrifying. Every deck had disenchant in it, in case, like you had to splash white to make sure that you could get rid of an Icy
Remind me
Manipulator.
what Icy Manipulator does?
So it's a 4-mana artifact. For 1 and tap it, you can tap basically anything, any creature or land and so, our decks weren't great, but basically every Icy Manipulator meant you could tap creatures down.
Right.
Yeah, you'd wait till the end of their turn and they're in step. I don't think it was called that yet. But you'd tap their toughest blocker and then it's your turn and you'd
The super combo, this is just the little kid combo from the beginning of Magic, is with a card called Royal Assassin. Royal Assassin is this 3-mana black creature. It's a 1/1 for 3 mana, so it's not exactly on the curve. Tap, destroy target tapped creature.
Oh.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
the
so
combo
tap
is
it.
just...
Icy Manipulator to Shivan Dragon and then kill it with a Royal Assassin.
Yeah.
Makes sense to
Now,
me.
to be clear, these are Ice Age Icy Manipulators. I never opened any of the Alpha, Beta, Unlimited. It was 4th edition by the time I started playing.
I could probably get you some if you...
I'm interested. I'm absolutely
listening.
interested.
I actually don't have a huge collection of old cards, but anyway.
I love this picture though. So you start with your decks, and this is kind of the tradition, like how people first came to Magic, is you have your deck, and then you open a pack, and you're like, oh, this is a little better in my deck, and you're slowly making your deck better, and then all of a sudden you have enough cards maybe for a second deck?
Absolutely. Yeah, and I was the one who I kept building more decks. For me, the deck building, that customization, trying to think up the better strategy, that was definitely the thing that sucked me in. So, at first it was, make this deck better, and the first single I ever bought was a Singer Vampire for like $3.
Yeah.
Nice. So let's, so how did that lead to competitive Magic play?
Right, so this is like 6 months, and then at the shop, I see this poster for something called a Pro Tour Qualifier. I think it was a Pro Tour Qualifier for, maybe the second Pro Tour that ever happened, something, and I'm like, what's that? And, started investigating, and the internet is really just starting to be a thing, right? I discovered there's these Usenet news groups.
Yes, Usenet.
Usenet
That's
news
how I
groups.
met Richard Garfield, was on Usenet.
Oh, that's amazing. I didn't know that. That's
Yeah.
awesome. So I found tournaments, and I get completely sucked in. I get completely hooked on tournaments and competing, and pretty rapidly, instead of playing kitchen table against my roommate, it was like, oh, what's the next tournament? There's this thing in a couple of weeks.
Reference back to Randy Buehler, competitive player.
Oh, God, yeah. No, I was hook, line, and sinker. And so I spent, the next 6 months getting good. I, found a deck on a Usenet news group for this Necropotence deck. This is basically Black Summer, if you know Magic's history. I'm like, put that deck together, and it's like, holy, this thing's amazing. The power. That's my first PTQ top 8 was with that,
So where was that
Necropotence deck.
PTQ? Do you
Minneapolis. I was in
Minneapolis.
Yeah, I was in grad school in philosophy in Minneapolis.
And this is 97, I think.
No,
right?
this is 96.
96.
My top 8, my first PTQ.
Okay,
Then
PTQ, Minneapolis, 1996.
Yeah.
Famous Randy Buehler makes his tournament debut.
Yeah, more or less.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's about right.
I just love this image of like, I've been fooling around with this for 6 months, Pro Tour. Because I've been playing for a few years now. I see Pro Tour, I'm like,
Run away!
PTQ, Pro Tour Qualifier.
Pro Tour
Okay.
qualifier.
Pro Tour qualifier.
Well, you had to do a qualifier first. So how'd you do in your first qualifier?
Well, it took me a year to actually get from the PTQ to the Pro Tour itself.
Right, but the qualifier, you got.
I made the top 8 of this one
Top
PTQ
8.
with this Necro deck.
So that got you into the Pro Tour.
Not quite. You have to win the PTQ. So I moved to Pittsburgh from Minneapolis. Like, I got my master's degree, and my wife and I had been at Vanderbilt together. We went to separate grad schools. That sucked. So I moved to Pittsburgh to get married, basically. Then I have to seek out the good Magic players, right? That was, of course, mission number 2.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Mission number 1 figured out. So I transferred to the PhD program at Pitt. She's at Carnegie Mellon at chemical engineering. And I'm trying to find the good Magic players. And I went to Pitt first, and there, it's okay. These are the multiplayer free-for-all players. There's the big table, and everybody's playing around it. Turns out one of the guys in that multiplayer free-for-all table that I kind of turned my nose at and walked away. It's Aaron Forsythe, who is currently the director of of Magic R&D at Wizards. Has been there for 20 years, basically running the joint.
Yeah, I think, spoiler alert, he gets his revenge later, right?
So it turns out the good players are at Carnegie Mellon, and they're just playing in Seyert Hall, basically this lobby outside the computer lab. That's where the good players are. I meet this guy named Eric Lauer at a random. It was a 2-headed giant tournament. It's my wife and I playing against Eric and this guy named Pete. And anyway, he invites me. I find the good Magic players, and I spend a year learning. They were better than me, which is great. That's how you get better at Magic, is you find people that are better than you,
Right.
play against them, figure out why they're beating you, and we kind of leveled each other up. And the thing was, I was the guy who was motivated to get on the Pro Tour.
Right.
So every weekend, I had the car. I would wake Eric up, throw him in the car, drive him to the PTQ. Eventually, so it takes me about a year from moving to Pittsburgh to actually qualify. The first Pro Tour I qualified
So you went
for.
to multiple PTQs.
Yeah. I didn't spike my first
yeah.
PTQ. I spent a year. I top 8'd it.
The
But
spiking story is coming.
the spiking story is coming. Finally qualified for the Pro Tour, and I figure my goal was I just want to qualify for the next one.
Right.
My goal is I want to qualify for the next one, and I'm going to put in the work because I want to see if I don't want to lose because I didn't try. I want to make sure if I can compete at this level, let's find out. So I tracked down what the best decks were from the World Championships the previous month. Built this playtest gauntlet, and we're just every day I would show up with the gauntlet of decks.
Every day.
Yeah, every day.
I
I probably played 40, 50, 60 hours of Magic a week.
Wow. Also,
That's
playtest
just-
gauntlet.
Oh
I
yeah, I mean,
love that.
I would have 10 decks. It's funny because Eric was the mad genius type. So he would have some idea and he would put it together out of little pieces of paper that he would slide inside the sleeves.
Yeah.
And if it was a good deck, then when I got home that night, I would build it out of real cards. And if it was a bad deck, I would just quietly take the pieces of paper out and throw them away. And we would never speak of it again.
Yeah.
So I feel like we broke that format. We go to this first Pro Tour. I'm qualified, Eric's qualified, and then there's two other guys who were freshmen just starting at Carnegie Mellon who tracked us down because they knew we were the Magic players on campus. Mike Turian and a guy named Dan Silberman. So the four of us, we're kind of practicing together for the Pro Tour. We went to Grand Prix, which was a brand new thing at the time. It was, I think, the third Grand Prix ever. Second North American Grand Prix was in Toronto.
Okay.
We drive up. Oh, it's funny. This is when I learned not to give Eric a map. Because he's just like this, math PhD genius guy. I give him a map, and I'm asking for directions, and this is before smartphones, obviously. I've just dated the story of the 90s, but Eric's like, okay, wait, first I have to make a list in my head of all of the intersections. And he's just studying the map, memorizing every intersection. He can't think visually. He can't read a map. He wants a list of every time two roads cross. So we give the atlas to Mike Turian, and Mike has us following the blue line. I'm like, no, that's a river, Mike.
Oh my gosh.
We crossed customs on the way to this tournament in Canada. This is right before the Pro Tour. I'm circle back, I promise. We crossed customs, and we're like, "Where are you going?" And he's like, "Oh, I'm going to this Magic tournament in Toronto." And he's like, well, "What are you going to play?" This is the customs agent at the border crossing.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to play this Urtog deck. And he's like, "Doesn't that deck just lose to this other one?" I didn't know the questions would be so hard.
It's tough getting into Canada.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Is your deck quality?
Yeah.
So we go to the tournament in Toronto, and three-fourths of the car makes the top 8 at this Grand Prix.
Yeah.
And everybody but me makes the top 8. One of the guys is playing my deck that I had used to qualify for the Pro Tour with. So people start talking about us, and this is where we become Team CMU.
And
this is just
and we got
you can see I'm like, okay, I'm wearing the CMU hat.
Team CMU hat.
We
There you
decide,
go.
fine, we're going to be Team CMU. We're this, it's not like you compete as a team in Magic, but having a group of people to play test with together was really a thing. That was just, I thought it was the right way to prepare for things like the Pro Tour. So Team CMU does really well at this Grand Prix, and we're studying. We go to the Pro Tour. I win the Pro Tour. And
There's the spike story.
There's the spike story.
First Pro Tour. Make sure we caught that. First Pro Tour.
First Pro Tour I ever went to, and
You win
I
it.
won the thing.
Oof.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Awesome. Well done. Yeah.
So turns out I could compete at that level. And once I had top 32, I was just I had earned my invite to the next one, and I'm just like, well, the rest of this is just house money, whatever. I was able to just think about Magic, and I really think our deck was the best deck that weekend. Like we had a better deck than everybody else. It was a Necropotent.
It was a
deck.
Necropotent skin.
Yeah,
deck.
my Twitter avatar to this day is the Necropotent skull from the art from that Ice Age card.
And
this is the hat I was wearing when I won.
That's
I dusted
amazing.
it off. It's
But
a little
now-
flatter now.
History,
but
yeah.
I'm thinking about the timeline. Wasn't I thought there was it was particularly interesting, if I remember right, that the Necropotent's deck was nerfed.
It was.
By the time of the of the PT, but you
Hypnotic Spectre had actually been banned.
Okay.
This is the extended format. So Necropotence had dominated Standard, which is like the last 2 years of cards, and then you guys introduced this extended format, which it didn't go all the way back to the Moxes, but like you could play dual lands, and we had this gorgeous sort of 3-color mana base. It's before Wasteland got printed. I was like, there's this one glorious weekend. Literally, the Tempest pre-release is happening in the room. Like, Wastelands have started to be printed, but for this brief moment, you had this gorgeous 3-color mana base and extended. Pretty similar to Modern. If you're a Modern Magic player, you might think of this as the equivalent of the Modern format. Anyway, our deck was just better than everybody else's Necro deck. It was better than everybody else's deck, and that was awesome. Yeah, totally changed my life.
So were you still in school, or did you go back to school,
Yeah.
or what?
I go back to campus, and my professors are like, "You want how much money? Why did you come back to class? You know what we get paid?"
How much was it, by the way?
$25,000.
$25,000.
Oh,
It's
just
like-
from the Pro Tour, from winning
It's
the.
I mean, it's like $50,000 now,
Right,
but
yeah.
it was $25,000 from one weekend of playing Magic.
Right.
So.
Well, if you go there for the weekend,
Right.
and you have not $25,000, and then a day later you have $25,000, that's.
It was ridiculous. Yeah,
Yeah.
totally changed my life. And I mean, eventually I tried to do grad school, but I really wanted to keep playing Magic and go to the tournaments.
Yeah.
And I took a sabbatical from grad school. I'm like, oh, I'll just play Magic for a little while. Maybe if I can actually make a living at this, right?
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
And for a couple of years, I was a professional Magic player.
Well, I think some of the SCAF, I think, did the same thing. I think a couple of the other guys that came over from Philly with Richard.
Right, Richard finished his PhD.
Yeah.
SCAF never quite did. I feel like the ABD is my favorite degree, the all but dissertation.
Oh, no.
Like, somebody's willing to pay you to go to grad school, so you got, you were good enough to get in, but then you didn't lock yourself in the library for 2 years and finish.
Yeah.
It's like, okay.
Right,
My wife has an ABD in chemical engineering. so-
All right.
Well, it was just interesting that so many people were not just undergrad, but master's degrees and PhDs.
Yeah.
Like a lot of this cohort were into like higher sciences education.
Yeah, it's the reason I was in grad school, I thought I really enjoyed arguing with smart people.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
that was the thing I liked to do. I wanted
Yeah.
to argue with smart people, and it turns out Magic is kind of that, like,
right.
for the Pro Tour.
It's
You know
like a
what's
core aspect.
right, what's really that is Wizards of the Coast.
Yeah, I was gonna say jumping ahead.
Especially like the R&D crowd with Scaff and
Yeah.
Robert Gutierrez, all these guys. It was just, that's what it was. Like, this pays a lot better, and I get to argue about fun stuff.
Right,
I'm
right.
in.
Okay,
It's
but-
great.
Right, exactly.
ahead a
so,
little bit,
Yeah,
but-
jumping ahead. So let's go back. So now you're on the Pro Tour.
Yeah.
And how you were on the Pro Tour for what, 2 years before?
Yeah, 2 years and change.
before
And
joining Watson.
I was flying all over the world. I went to Europe 10 times. I went to
Wow.
Japan 3 times, Kuala Lumpur, Australia.
You did this. How did you fund that? Was it the winnings?
Out of winnings. I mean, mostly out of winnings. I mean, I don't think it's the kind of thing you could actually at the time recommend as a career.
Right.
I was really motivated by trying to be Player of the Year, and I won the first Pro Tour of Season 3. So I was one of the first people that would fly to Grand Prix. Like, I would fly to Europe and I would play a Grand Prix, which only had a couple $1,000s in prize money.
Right.
I did pretty good. I don't know that those were actually good, expected value decisions, because you had to bake top 8 to not lose money on the travel expenses.
Right.
But I mean, I figured it felt like this once in a lifetime opportunity.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And,
for sure.
I would always schedule an extra day and, do the touristing things. I felt like I got to see the world while I was doing it. And, I did all right. The other thing was I would write about the game. Like, I would go to these events, and then I would write tournament reports were really becoming a thing. And just the way the Magic community worked, especially in the late 90s, it sort of revolved. It was starting to revolve around the internet.
Yeah.
It was starting to revolve around, tournament reports were the big thing at the time. And, the dojo was where a lot of people sort of found each other,
So
where
let's
that
talk
community
about
really started to...
Let's talk about the dojo.
Yeah.
I'm gonna confess, during our pre-show interview, you said great things about the dojo, and I was aware of the dojo, but I think you gave me a much greater respect for the dojo in that conversation than I had before.
I'm not aware of the dojo, so
Yes,
start from
so-
the beginning.
I mean, thank you. There's a famous quote in philosophy that how all of modern philosophy is actually just footnotes to Plato. That like Plato did everything 2,500 years ago, and we're still just kind of working out the details of all the stuff he set up. I feel that way about the dojo.
Yeah.
Like, all of Magic Online community is just footnotes to the dojo. So it's this guy, Frank Kusamoto. He's I think he worked for the government. He was like an information guy. I'm never entirely 100% clear what his job
He's a
was,
spy.
but he might have been. More realistically, he was the guy feeding the information to the actual spot. I don't know. This is probably totally made up. This is like my image of Frank. But
He's cringing at the moment. Right?
but he just wanted to see, like, he was more. I mean, he wasn't. I never saw him play Magic. I never saw him at tournaments as a
Interesting.
competitive guy.
Yeah.
He was a little older than most of the competitive scene, but he was into websites, and the internet is really just starting. I mean, I find it kind of awesome that Magic and graphical browsers start in the same year. Like the World Wide Web basically launches the same year Magic does, and they both kind of grow up together.
Yeah.
So the dojo is Frank's effort to say, can I have a browser page that people can go to and just collect all the information that exists about Magic? And so people started writing tournament reports. You know, Brian Hacker out of one of the California Magic players was just tremendous as a writer, and people would be telling the stories about the events, about the late night drafting and the trash talk about the events. And then you had people trying to work out the theory of Magic, like what's card advantage? Like somebody had to articulate what does it mean to, how do you win a game with a controlled deck? How do you win a game with an aggro deck? And a lot of this sort of Magic theory got worked out, and it's all happening on this one website, the dojo. And it was free. Frank wasn't trying to make any money off of it. It was just this like thought experiment in information, and it was glorious. It was just all spectacular. I remember when I qualified for the Pro Tour, I like sent in, oh my God, I qualified for the Pro Tour. Here's my deck, and he like posted it on the page. And no question, when I won the Pro Tour, I was going to do the long tournament report. And I still go back and read it from time to time. It's still there.
Well, the tournament reports kind of foreshadow where we're going to end this. Talking about what you're doing these days later in the show. So had you also played in neutral ground during this era, right?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I was in Pittsburgh, so we could drive to New York when there's a big tournament.
So I was in New York. Yeah, just for there's a retail store in New York that.
Yeah, it's like the best ever. I don't know, best ever. One of the best local game stores you could imagine.
Yeah.
And Brian David Marshall just put this store together and turned it into this mecca that would draw Magic tournament players in particular. John Finkel played there. Steve O'Mahony Schwartz played there. Z Malshowitz got locked in overnight once or twice.
Once or twice.
Well, I think
he lost count.
I think he spent Christmas break there once. Like he was in the bathroom and Brian locked up, and Svi just raided the candy supplies, left some money on the floor. Brian goes in to unlock like 2 days later, and then Z just comes bouncing out and walks out the door. And Brian's like, "What?"
Like a cat that you left locked in your bedroom during
Precisely.
vacation.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
No, it's interesting. I had the dojo and neutral ground were things that I heard about. While I was at Wizards, but I regret that I didn't have as full of appreciation in the moment, especially for the dojo. I actually went to neutral ground a couple times.
Sure.
It was like, because that was a place people were playing games, right? And so it was really like, hey, this store is a place, it's a mecca, lots of people are there. So, and it was in New York, so it was easy to swing by. So I went there a couple times. But a website devoted to Magic, it didn't have the same sort of relevance in those days.
Sure.
Like it wasn't the type of thing that you would think of like, oh, that's really important, as opposed to, oh, that's cool, that's neat, that's cute. And
what happens historically is that the online game stores become a thing, and online game stores figure out, oh, people love reading about Magic, and whether it's tournament reports or nowadays it's much more deck lists, like what's the deck I should play, what should my arena deck be, whatever. But the big online stores have started to hire people to write, and so you still have this culture of people make money off of Magic. People who know Magic really well, whether it's pros or just good writers, make money by putting articles on the websites of these online stores to attract traffic, so that the store can then sell their cards or whatever. And when I was a pro, that was starting to happen. So I was actually I stopped writing for the dojo and started writing for David Doust and New Wave Games. That became one of the first websites to kind of do this. I was one of the first guys to get one of those contracts to say, oh, hey, I'll write a weekly article that'll drive traffic to your website. And so yeah, I was supplementing my income. This all started like, can you actually make money as a professional Magic player? Kinda. I did it for 2 years. I think I made like $60,000 in prize money, and maybe 20 or 30 writing about it, something like that. It's enough to. But now you got to take out the expenses of flying all over the world.
Flying over the world.
Better than I was doing as a grad student. Way better than I was doing as a grad student, but not necessarily something you could call a career, right? This isn't what I'm gonna do for the rest of my life.
I think a lot of I reflect back on the types of conversations we were having in the company about that.
Sure.
Because we were certainly promoting it as professional Magic, and the prize money, and there was kind of like this question of like, could people really actually? Does this make sense that somebody, we worried about like, does it make sense that somebody might drop out of college to become a professional Magic player? Is that a smart career? Well, if you win enough, then yes.
Right.
Or if you get hired by WotC later.
Well, that turns out to be the real fact.
Then yes, right. But I also, I always felt good about it from the sense that there were these tracks. I grew up in an era, of course, that there wasn't much in the way of sort of an intellectual sport as we branded, as we positioned Magic, right? I mean, there was chess and bridge and stuff, but in terms of something you could make some money at and get more recognition, to me, Magic the Gathering and the Pro Tour and the competitive play was sort of geek revenge. In a way, it was like, there was always collegiate football and basketball and baseball and people get to play other sports and go off and compete, and it becomes this important, arguably, some might disagree, but sort of an arguably important, at least certainly important for some percentage of the population who goes through school and participates in these sports, but there was nothing like that for geeks. So for Magic, that was, to me, the appeal of the Pro Tour and esports now, and of course there are challenges with it, and potential downsides, but I think it's really great.
I think it's great too. I mean, I think that for me, the community was the best part. Right? This was the way that, I don't know, geeky, smart kids would find each other. Yeah. Like, those are still, many of my best friends to this day are people I know from the Pro Tour back in the 90s.
I was talking recently to Brian Weissman, and he said the same thing. He said, traveling the world, going to Pro Tour events, Grand Prix, all over the world. Like, I mentioned Europe and Australia, and you mentioned Kuala Lumpur and stuff. These sort of broaden a perspective, and that he felt that Magic community broke down a lot of barriers about race and ethnicity, like in the sense that like we are all playing with Japanese players and European players and everything, and form like you said, friendships that lasted a life. So who from that era are you still friends? Is there? I'm putting you on this spot. I mean,
it's a little bit of a cheat with me because a lot of the friends I knew from Pittsburgh, the guys I played Magic with specifically, followed me to Wizards.
Yeah, and are still friends.
And absolutely,
but that's not a cheat because you would have fallen apart if you. I mean, not fallen apart. Randy Buehler falls apart. No. I think these friendships do, drift apart without something like that holds you together, right?
Chris McCool is probably a great example. Chris McCool is just a great guy. I never would have met Chris McCool if it wasn't for Magic. And, I still chat him up on Facebook all the time. Brian David Marshall's another guy.
Right.
I've worked with BDM for a long time because of Magic, but still just chat him up for fun.
Yeah.
Right.
It's Zvi Malshowitz, Bob Maher. A lot of these are guys I would talk to. I mean that's ignoring my actual my team. The Mike Turians and of the world.
Right. That's fantastic. All right. So, Wizards of the Coast. Like, how does this glorious... And by the way, you said you were striving to be a Pro Tour Player of the Year.
Yeah, what happened?
Did you ever make it?
I finished second. There's this guy named John Finkel. I don't know if you've heard of him.
Oh, yes. He's a nice guy,
John's
he is
great.
A charming
Speaking
guy.
of friends I keep up with to this day, I think I was number 2. Like I don't think I was as good as John, but I think I was the second best player in those couple of years when I was playing. I put up, I top 8'd half the Grand Prix I played. I only had the one Pro Tour top 8, but I had like 4 other top 16s. I cashed 10 of the 12 Pro Tours I played. I felt like, okay, I'm one of the best players. I had myself at number 2, not behind John, but I thought I was better than everybody else. Whatever.
A little nod to humility there. Second only to John Finkel.
So I finished second that year. I finished top 10 the next year. And the real thing that happens, I mean, the way the story segues to Wizards is you guys printed this set called Urza's Saga?
Yes, we did.
It's full of broken cards. There are quite a few mistakes in that set. And
not my fault. I didn't design it.
I mean, on your watch, but sure.
On my watch, yeah.
So, I have this team of people who are trying to, break the format before every Pro Tour. And, we went to Pro Tour Rome and played this Tolarian Academy deck. And, Eric top 8'd. I lost my win in for top 8. Deck was great. We went to, then the next set comes out as Urza's Legacy, and it's more of the same. There's this card called Memory Jar that, we built this jar deck, and it's like the set had just come out. We built this Memory Jar deck, and we're just killing people on, turn 2, sometimes turn 1. You're not supposed to do that. This is not vintage.
No.
This is not, no Mox is involved in this.
Right.
So Eric and I both book a flight to Vienna. We're just flying to Austria to play this deck this weekend.
Right.
Both make the top 8 of the tournament. Some guy named Kai Buddha wins it. Maybe you've heard of him too.
I have too, yes.
But so the jar deck is broken in half. So my team and I are constantly breaking these cards. And I would have conversations with the folks from Wizards. Mark Rosewater was the guy.
Probably, right?
Mark Rosewater went to all the Pro Tours, and
Right,
he was
right.
involved in the coverage of the top 8s. The top 8s would have broadcasts. This is back in the 90s. There were already top 8 broadcasts for Magic streamed over the internet.
Wow.
Way ahead of time.
Yeah.
So Mark would put the broadcast together, but he would also just talk to the pros about what they thought of the cards, and he would he was the guy who would bring information back to R&D and tell them,
Right.
And so I'm constantly telling Mark, this is a mistake. You need to ban this card. You need to ban this card. And I had this dialogue going with Mark where, I was one of the guys he would look to for advice on what cards might need to get banned, what things were.
Right.
The memory jar that we actually flew to Vienna with was the only emergency ban in the history of Magic.
Oh, wow.
So I got that on my resume.
Emergency ban.
I'm very proud of that
Yeah.
one. Well, what happens, Saga comes out, and there's like half a dozen broken things going on, and combo winter happens, and people are don't want to play because the decks are too ridiculous. So Wizards bans like, I don't know, 3 or 4 or 5 different cards. They basically, they tried banning a couple cards, and it wasn't good enough, so then they're just like, ban everything. But then Legacy comes out, and Memory Jar is just as bad. So that used to be they would announce bannings, and then they would kick in a month later. Right. And so they announced the bannings, and then Legacy comes out like a week later, and my Vienna tournament is like, it's after the bans have been announced, but before they kick in.
Yeah.
And I'm like, your thing of banning everything isn't going to work. You got to get this new card too. So they retroactively added it to the latest banned list. And yeah, so breaking a card and getting the adulation of top 8 in the tournament, getting the prize money,
Being
and
a
then
Mark
having an
Rosewater's
emergency ban.
face,
Mark, that may have been
you guys suck.
winning the Pro Tour is the actual peak, but that's
Right.
probably my second favorite
Yeah.
moment. So Mark, basically, we get this, and I think you guys figured out. You probably know the insider version of this story, right? You guys
Yeah,
basically
so-
figured out you needed to hire pros because the pros had just
yeah.
gotten ahead of the talent that was in R&D.
So there was this brief, glorious moment where those of us at Wizards of the Coast were the best players in the world, right?
Right, sure, makes sense.
Now I say
You
we
had like a 3-year head start on the rest
I'm
of
being
us.
very generous to myself by saying we. It was really, of course, Scaff and Jim and Bill Rose and Dave Petty, all those guys. And, but my goal, I was never as good as they were. My goal was that they would have to pay attention when they played me or I might beat them. Right. Don't play sloppy. Better. Anyway, so, but we realized, yes, around this time, leading up to this, is that, oh my God, we're not the best players. I mean, we're not. We're working all the time. These guys are playing.
Yeah, exactly.
And what are we going to do about it? And I remember a conversation with Scaff. Now, I don't know if it was right before you were hired or how long before, but Scaff came and talked to me and said, how would you feel about us hiring off the Pro Tour, right? And we knew the problem was like, yeah, of course. I mean, we got to, like, there was a conscious decision within Wizards to look at the Pro Tour and consider it a recruit. Just whisper, right?
Yeah.
Who would we like and who would we like to be with? Who would hang out and fit in culturally?
Yeah.
Who are the best players? We should consider the Pro Tour a recruiting ground for Magic R&D.
Makes sense.
Absolutely, right?
Yeah.
So back to you.
Yeah, no, so Mark Rosewater said to me at one of these conversations, you should apply for this job. So I applied for the job. This is 99, like summer of 99.
Yeah.
I remember I got interviewed at, I think it was Origins. Bill Rose came out. I met Bill Rose.
Yeah.
He interviewed me for this job. So yeah, I mean, and like I said, there wasn't really enough money to make a career out of being a pro Magic player. There kind of is now. That's the thing. Like,
There's people who do it.
After I got to Wizards, one of the first things I heard, like Scaff Elias, who literally sits catty corner to where my cube was, he tells me they're about to add a bunch of prize money to the Pro Tour. Like, you told me this now? What do you want? You told me this 6 months ago?
Yeah.
But seriously, I mean, it wouldn't have changed.
I know.
Decision.
I'm happy. I
Right.
have totally agreed. It would not have actually changed. It was just kind of.
It was funny though.
ironic.
Yeah.
Nowadays,
And
like,
it's also fun. It's a typical Scaff story to talk, about money and like how you can best make money from Magic.
I would say nowadays I do think you can make a living as a professional Magic player.
Yeah.
Like, they're actually.
Interesting.
They've got. They just started this thing called the MPL, the Magic Professional League, where the top. I think it's going to be the top 32 guys or 24 guys, top 24 players. They get $50,000 just for being in the thing. Then they also get to compete in all these tournaments and win prize money where their EV is probably another $50,000. So I mean, I think if you are one of the top 20 guys, top 20 people, I think you can realistically think I can have a $100,000 job.
Well,
That, sure, you get travel expenses and it's this
yeah.
fairly unique skill. But it has gotten there. I think only really in the last couple of years. Before that, it didn't actually make sense to leave college to go be a
Right.
professional player. I don't know.
All
Probably still doesn't.
Okay,
So I applied for the job.
You applied for the job.
I applied for a job at Wizards of the Coast. Then, you can probably fill in more of these details. I hear that Wizards has sold itself to Hasbro.
Oh, I remember that. Yeah, that's right.
Right.
So I'm like, oh no, what happened? Is this is it over? Do I still,
It's
does this
over.
job even exist?
I remember that. Every once in a while, I think, oh, I'm going to drive into work. Oh, wait, no. I sold that company.
So technically, I never worked for Wizards. I missed working for Wizards by like 3 weeks.
Right.
I started in October '99, and I think the buyout consummated like October 1st.
October 1st, 1999 was the deal. I mean, we had a deal sheet before then and went through due diligence, but the final papers
it had been
were
announced
signed
before that. I didn't realize I came that close to working for freestanding Wizards. But I gamed that system. I was happy with. The gamer in me heard they were talking about a November 1st start date, and I'm reading this stuff, and it's like, oh, I get benefits a month earlier. If I start on the 31st, then the benefits kick in a full month earlier because they kick on the next month. They'd be like the next day.
Did Mark Rosewater suggest that to you? Because I think he did something similar.
He might have.
I think he gamed his start date too.
He has the best story. He got his gamed by like a year.
Actually, that was the whole criteria. Was the final test. Is anybody we hired in Magic, they better game their start date, or else they're clearly not qualified.
Yeah, it turns out I also got a bonus check by doing it that way. I mean, I only got like 2/12 of the year worth of a bonus check, but I got a bonus check for the first year that I would not have gotten had I started November 1st. And there was this game called Pokemon that kind of went nuts, so that was a bonus check worth getting, even if I only got 1/6 of it.
Right. Well, that's good. I'm glad you got a little bit of both. That'd been a little embarrassing if we were passing out bonus checks.
Well, I still remember Jim Lynn he felt like apologetic, because it was only 1/6 of a check, and he's handing out these just massive checks. People got like the equivalent of a year's salary or something, like 75% of their year's salary. The bonus plan was, it was set up that if the company did great, people would get to share. So people were. I don't remember if they were getting more than their year's salary, but it was definitely a large fraction of the year's salary.
We had, the culture.
They fixed that after. That was the year that.
And we told everybody, hey, listen, after the acquisition, it's going to be different. It's going to be more like a typical company. But my philosophy at Wizards was always that Wizards did not really collect much investment capital for the size of company it became.
Sure.
Like over a period of about 3 years, we only raised about $300,000 for a company that was sold for basically $500 million. 10 years later, and so I always argued, and everybody agreed. Richard agreed. He was always a big supporter of this sort of thing. Like, let's make a really big bonus package and big stock options, and because the investors who were really important and got us started, their contribution compared to the contribution of the employees was a smaller percentage of contribution, if you will, except for, of course, Richard creating Magic the Gathering.
Sure.
And so it gave us the luxury, and of course, Magic was very profitable, so it gave us the luxury of that. So
I was happy with my bonus. Jim seemed apologetic, and I'm just like, I've been living hand to mouth trying to pay travel expenses off of prize winnings.
All right, we are like well into the hour, and you only now just got hired. So let's okay. At Wizard of the Coast, what's your first job? What's the very first thing they have you work on?
They put me on the Invasion development team.
Invasion.
Invasion is my first set.
Invasion.
And Invasion was my first set. I remember I went on the first day, and people knew who I was from the Pro Tour, so I had a certain amount of credibility.
I knew who you were.
And I was able to say things and make changes. And so Invasion was the first real gold themed set. Right, multicolor cards were part of it, and I came in. We'd all been playing monocolor decks on the Pro Tour because the company kept printing lands that tap for colorless mana, thinking that's a drawback. I'm like, no. Anyway, I pushed to have better multi-lands in the set, and proposed a multi-land that at the time people were looking at me. This is crazy. It's basically like the Alpha Dual lands tap for either two different colors. The only drawback was that it came into play tapped. And they're like, that's way too good. We can't print that. That's better than a basic land. I'm like, you need to print it if you're gonna have a multi-color set. And with historical hindsight, that land's not even good. They print that land at common nowadays. And I was like, that was my big push to have that be the multi-land that we could hang our gold-colored set on. So anyway, I felt like I was able to hit the ground running, and I was able to sort of, for me, I don't know, everybody's probably the hero of their own narrative. But for me,
that's what we look for.
Right. I feel like once I got there's a couple trajectories that kind of changed in the way Magic sets work. I think the multi-lands got better. Magic is just more fun when people can cast their spells.
Yes.
You want people to play 2 and 3 color decks, so you got to print good multi-lands. The Invasion ones were the first step, but then the fetch lands from Onslaught are the the really ones. Like there had been fetch lands before.
Is that like, how's a fetch land? What do you mean by a fetch land?
It's a land that you tap and sacrifice it to go search through your deck for the land you actually want and put it into play.
Okay.
And there were some of those in, I think it's Mirage, but they came into play tapped. And it was just like, take the Mirage ones, they come into play untapped. So the only cost is pay a life and go get whatever land you want. And then we made it so they comboed with the original dual lands. So mana bases just got a lot better on my watch, I think, as early 2000s.
Yeah.
The other big thing is the big creatures got better. Like this was, a lot of this is Bill Rose pushing me. Like there's this dragon cycle in Invasion in particular. Like again, my first set, there's these. We wound up printing them as these 6 mana, 6/6 flying dragons.
Right.
3 colors, 3 different colors of mana, kind of like the reminiscent of the Elder Dragon Legends from Legends.
Right.
But playable. At least that was the idea. And
sorry, Steve Conrad.
yeah. So Bill's pushing me, and I'm just like. They had taken Sarah Angel out of the core set because she was too good. Like, what do you, 5 mana, 4/4 flying bitch? This isn't, she's not even playable in Constructed. She's not too good. Like, the curve on big creatures was just off, I thought. And so, between pushing the big creatures so they actually just had better stats and were playable, and then taking the cheap answers out. Like, one of my favorite decks, I played this,
Cheap answer, what do you mean by a cheap answer?
Counterspell for 2 mana can say no to anything. Like you play your 6 mana, 6/6 dragon, and I can stop it for 2 mana, or 1 mana for Swords to Plowshares.
Right.
Yeah, that's why that's why you have to push the bigger creatures, because if you have something that's it's like, well, this isn't good enough even if it lands, and it's not going to land because of the answers.
Yeah, I mean, you look at 90s Magic now, and like the spells are just so much better than the creatures.
Yeah.
And I really see Invasion as the turning point there. I think, you had to take Counterspell away from people like me, right? That was just what needed to happen. Stop printing removal as good as Swords to Plowshares. Maybe every once in a while they do something like that. But the big creatures got better, the spells got worse, the mana bases got more colorful, I guess. I mean, those are the trajectories that I think, if you look at early 2000s Magic, all of that kind of all of those trajectories turn in a direction that I think has made Magic a better game. I mean, that's
and you feel connected to that. I mean, you were a big part of it.
I think of that as my legacy.
That's great.
I mean,
that's fabulous.
Yeah.
Like I say, not in italics after the word Magic the Gathering, but right. What is how do you? I mean, I forgot what I was going to say.
Well, I was going to say, we were talking about
Thank you.
me getting into Commander recently. And so you look at the old cards, because before that I played Limited, played Standard, you don't really look at the old cards. But now going back, it's like, this creature costs like 6 white, and it's like a 3/3 that like does this thing. Like, how? Wow, and then just like seeing a lot of the stuff that's coming out now and how interesting, it is and powerful. Yeah,
Urnum Jin was the stud creature in the, like some of the Road Tours that I was playing. One of my first really good deck was this, Urnum Armageddon deck. And you're like, all right, Urnum Jin it's 3 and a green, so 4 mana for a 4/5 with a drawback.
Yeah.
Right, it's like you had to give one of your opponent's creatures Force Walk. This was so much better than anything else you could get your hands on.
Yeah.
People were splashing green to put this in their deck. And, I remember, it's funny, we went, Judgment was one of the sets I worked on, like, I guess my 3rd year there. And we're like, oh, we'll bring back Urnum Jin. This will be great. We have this, like, green and white themed set. We'll bring back this famous green creature. And, like, we had already moved the curve so much that he was just whatever. Nobody even played with him at that point. Like, so the other creatures were already better, even just a couple years into this.
So I remember what I was going to ask you. Like, it seems to me like when you got hired by Wizards, you were kind of just doing the same thing you were doing before. Like, basically,
I just changed teams.
You just changed teams.
Right. I used to break the cards before they would come out. Now I used to break the cards after they would come out.
Right.
It's the big difference was when you break them before, it used to be I would get adulation and prize money. Now when I break the cards inside Wizards, they just take my toys away.
Yeah, right.
Like, you can't play with that anymore.
Yeah.
That is one of the things that sucks when you're involved in playtesting a game is you find that you're so excited about the thing you find that kind of breaks the game. And then, of course, the designers get rid of it. And there's all sorts of people that are like, no, the game was much better during playtesting. Like that.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing about working in R&D, I've really had a tremendous amount of respect and appreciation for the way Richard really set it up, where there was designers and what at the time they called developers.
Right.
I think they call them final designers now because they make developers a little ambiguous in a world where everybody's programming computers and these guys all sometimes want to go get jobs at other companies. Whatever. Design and development was what it was called back in the day, the way it was explained to me is that nobody can call their own kids ugly.
Right.
Right. The designer is going to have their pet cards, and you need a second set of eyes to kind of come in and pass judgment on those cards and sort of get rid of the ugly kids and test the numbers is the other thing.
Right.
Like the designer's job is to make the card as fun as it can be, as cool as it can be, and then it was the developers like me who would come in and make sure that it's balanced and it's not going to lead to some turn one kill combo deck.
So what did where did you go? Like how long were you at Wizards? We're going to get to Q&A and stuff fairly soon. So like how long were you at Wizards? And
I was at 1 decade, one really good, awesome decade, basically.
Wow.
And you were in a management position by the end, or
I rose up through the ranks pretty fast. Like I think it was like 7 promotions in 7 years. Like I came in very entry level, and I was just one of the guys testing the cards. But then by the end of that first year, I was one of the guys running the teams. Right. And then the director of Magic R&D position was basically created so that I could be promoted into it. And then I had all the designers, all the developers, and the artists sort of all reported up through me. So I was basically running Magic R&D for. Probably the longest stretch I had any one title was probably that stretch running.
Well done.
R&D.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bravo.
Nice. Yeah.
That's a great. I mean, that's a great story.
Yeah. What's funny? One of the guys on the creative team, this guy Brady Dommermuth. He started as an editor, but then he was doing a lot of names and flavor text and art descriptions. His advice was like, you work in a treehouse.
Right.
Try to stay near the trunk. I did not heed this advice. The end of my career is me kind of wandering out into digital games and. Convincing Hasbro to fund digital games, and that didn't work out as well. But the Magic part was awesome.
That's too bad. Hey, I want to ask, Dominic, do we have any Q&A, any questions from?
Randy, was there any favorite deck or favorite broken card in your career in Magic that you really gravitated towards? Was there any one thing that you would say is your absolute favorite?
I mean, favorite card has to be Necropotence, just because that's the one I won the Pro Tour with. Favorite broken card, though, the Jar story is really a highlight for me. Being able to get a card emergency banned. Like, nobody else has done that, ever. So that definitely was, a notch.
And remind me, there's the Memory Jar.
Memory Jar, so it's a 5-mana artifact. You tap and sacrifice it. Both players set their hands aside, draw 7 new cards, and then at the end of the turn, you get rid of that hand and go back to your original hand back. So it's supposed to be this, like, I'll just refresh my hand.
Yeah.
We built the deck that we built with that every hand of 7 cards could probably get another Memory Jar into play and crack it again.
Yeah.
And so now you just go through like 3 hands of cards. And the kill card was hilarious. Is this card called Megrim, this like innocuous 3-mana black enchantment that said whenever you discard a card, take 2 damage. Right? It's supposed to be in your like Hypnotic Spectre or Himbitorok deck. But the way the Memory Jar works, at the end of the turn, all 3 of these jars cause you to discard your hand and get back the original one. So you just kill your opponent as the Memory Jar is unwound at the end of the turn.
Yeah, nice.
Because you have the chance to play your cards and he or she doesn't.
And the enchantment only hurts them. Like, it doesn't hurt you when you discard. It's only when they discard.
When your opponent discards.
Yeah, it turns out the more broken card in that deck was actually Tinker, which eventually figured out, but whatever. Tinker and Memory Jar came together. That was the key to that deck.
Nice.
One more from somebody in the chat. Grand Pappy Belcher asks, how would you build the deck for a middle school format?
Oh, wow.
How would you build it? Should I repeat that? Are you on mic? How should you? The question is, should you rebuild a deck for a middle school?
Right. Yeah. I don't really. The middle school format's so perfect for me. So
first, what is it?
I'm getting there. So people started playing this format they call old school. It's basically 93, 94 Magic.
Right.
So it has become one
it's
of
like
the
Alpha
things.
40, I think. Or something.
Alpha 40 is a variant of that. That's what the true degenerates play. Is they play Alpha 40 because the thing
is that why they reached out to me?
Yes, absolutely. Alpha 40 is you can only play cards from specifically Alpha. Like you can't even play the beta version of the card.
Right.
Like you much like that unlimited Black Lotus. Get that out of here.
Yeah,
Alpha only, and by Alpha rules, which means there's no 4-of limit yet.
And there's Ante.
I have not seen the format played for Ante, but Alpha 40 with no 4-of limit. Like how many Black Lotus? How many Alpha Black Lotuses can you get your hands on?
One turn kill decks, right?
Yeah, how many can you get your hands on, right?
It's really your limit is really how many can you get your hands on. But Steve Mendennian had a deck put together for that literally would just first turn kill like 80-90% of the time.
Oh,
I've got one.
Do you?
Yeah, I do.
Nice. Tell me about your Alpha 40 deck.
Yeah. It's Moxes, blue Moxes, Black Lotuses, Time Walks, Ancestral Recalls, and maybe Brain Geyser, I can't remember, and Juggernauts to do damage. So you just take lots of turns, lots of cards, lots of turns.
Just
and
Fireball.
Eventually you get a, that's another one. But
Attacking with Juggernaut is cooler though. I like the Jug.
I like a blue, and Juggernaut. Who doesn't love Juggernaut?
true.
That's just
true.
I always just love the Juggernaut.
I
Yeah,
take it
and
back.
you know,
That's
blue deck. I like blue decks.
All right, so middle school
yeah.
format.
So
Middle school.
93, 94.
Yes,
so,
we
so
will
that-
get to your question.
That's
yes.
Alpha 40. Old school is 93, 94. It has become kind of
Okay.
a big deal. It's you know,
Okay.
there are 100-person tournaments for this format now.
Okay.
And the prices of the cards have kind of gone berserk. So middle school is like starting after old school. So it's like starting in 95 and then running up until where the modern format begins.
Okay, so
So
this
it's
is your
in between old school and modern.
This
It's
is
like,
your sweet spot.
It's my sweet spot.
Yes.
It's the 2 years I was a
That's
pro.
a smart question then.
It's the 2 years I was a pro and the 4 years I was running Magic R&D.
Yeah.
Like, how perfect is this
All right,
format
all
for
right.
me?
Okay, you got like 2 minutes to give your answer now. Now that we all know the question.
Right. The answer's hard because it depends on what the banned restricted lists are. Like, Memory Jar gets banned in a lot of these formats.
Right,
Like,
sure.
there's two versions of middle school. There's middle school, and then there's like pre-modern. And so depending on which banned list, I don't
Right.
think I have a good answer for the question.
Yeah.
I do think you can play Illusions.
But yeah,
Donate
good
in that
stories.
format.
So
Yeah.
that's just as good.
I just want to play Draw-Go in that format. I want to play mono blue with all the counter spells. That's it's probably not the best deck, but it's the sweetest deck for me. It's the nostalgia. It's
Right,
the nostalgia.
right,
for me.
Yeah,
The best.
yeah.
Okay, so you're gonna have to go find your own answers to that question. But I bet you could read some of your old articles and get some great
True.
ideas.
Totally.
Uh,
Yeah.
Right, totally. Any other questions over there?
All right.
Well,
Sweet.
all right. So I catch us up for after that. I mean, like, lead us up to whatever you want to tell us from after WotC to now, like what you're working on these
sure.
days, what you want to plug, any projects, anything like that. You know.
Yeah, I mean, I was at an indie dev studio for a little while, working on online trading card games was the dream, but I mean those studios always run out of money after a couple of years, and we failed to launch anything. We were not the ones who came up with Hearthstone, so
Right.
that was fun for a while. It gave me sort of another perspective on the gaming industry. The other thing it gave me though is it's just more fun being part of the Magic community than getting a real job.
Yeah.
So I went back to
So
doing
you
Magic.
still really love Magic.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
You
No,
can't-
that's awesome. That's awesome.
I had been doing commentary the whole time. Like,
Right.
toward the end of my Pro Tour career, I started doing commentary for the top 8s of the Pro Tour.
Right.
And when I was at Wizards, like, one of the first things I did, I went to Jeff Danae and was like, I want to keep doing commentary. And
Right.
like, Bill Rose says, you can have my time. If you will pay to fly me to the Pro Tours, you can have my time, and then I'll do the commentary.
Right.
And then, I became that Mark Rosewater guy who was talking to the pros, bringing the information back, and then, would be the host of the show, the show.
Right.
So, I did the broadcasts for I think over 100 premier events, like
Nice.
something like 70 Pro Tours. Like there aren't many people who've been to more Pro Tours than me.
Yeah.
So anyway, I went back to doing commentary even after I left Wizards. Like I stopped
Right.
doing commentary when I left Wizards, but I went back to doing commentary, and
Right.
they were doing commentary for Grand Prix at the time. And lately, what I've gotten into is hosting a show on Twitch.
Right.
So the Magic Super Leagues are really
Okay.
my baby.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm the producer and I'm also the host, and putting together essentially here's a group of celebrities playing Magic.
Right.
It's almost got like a Poker After Dark vibe to it.
Right.
So we'll have a season will last a couple of months. Watch the prelims
Right.
into the playoffs, and
Right.
that's been a lot of fun. And it's funny. I'm able to monetize it just well enough to not feel guilty about not having a real job.
Right.
Right? It's like it's not really a full-time job, but it's enough that I don't feel like I have to go get a full-time job.
Yeah.
Which
Yeah.
is kind of a sweet spot to be in, right?
Yeah, I agree. And I happen to know you also because I played in it once. I played in your Meeple League.
Right. Yeah,
Yes,
I've really gotten
yes.
into board games.
Oh, nice.
I play a ton of board games, and part of
Do
it
you
is
compete?
because
I know you like to compete. Do you compete?
that's
like,
exactly where I was going.
Yeah.
Well, here's the thing: Wizards won't let me play Pro Tours anymore. Like
Oh.
when I took the job, I said, my goal is to do my job well enough that the Pro Tour will still be there for me when I retire.
Right.
That was
Right.
always my dream. Except 6 months after, my wife and I moved out. Sorry. She got a job at Wizards.
Right.
She applied for a
Oh,
job in
right.
the editing department. Like
Yeah.
she's
Oh
trained.
yeah.
She's trained as a chemical engineer, but
And she's there now.
She's still there. And so I am married to a Wizards employee.
So you can't be on the Pro Tour.
So I am banned from any Premier level play.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
so they don't like the optics of a Wizards employee spouse.
And
doing
the
well.
whole Magic community breathes a sigh of relief. Randy Buehler will not at any moment not soon anyway, be making a grand re-entry.
I've seen free Randy hashtags floating around a little bit. I think it's more of the other.
Yeah.
Would be cool to see, I think it would be cool to see me go back.
Yeah.
See the free Randy hashtags from time to time
Right.
when the conversation comes up. Like, it's funny, my wife works there. I remember when they hired her, you were asking me about stories to some of the people that were there. Bill Rose was the guy. Bill Rose was my boss. He's still the VP of Magic.
Bill, great guy.
Great guy.
Yep.
Interviewed me. His role when they hired editors was always he would go in to make sure they knew Magic. Like, it's Darla Kenneroo doing the hire. But Bill would be the one who would go in to see if they know Magic. And so he gets his resume, and she uses her name. She's Del Loggle, not Del Buehler. So he had no idea.
Oh, didn't know it was your wife.
Walks into the interview and was like, "Oh, I had dinner with you. Yeah, she's fine." And just turns around and leaves.
Yeah.
That's right. So you've gotten into competitive.
I've gotten into competitive board games. I'm not allowed to play Magic.
Like the.
I fly to the World Board Gaming Championships every year. That is. That's often the hat that I'm wearing on Twitch streams, actually. The World Board Gaming Championships is just this week of.
Yeah, it's a week of madness.
It's insane. It's like 150 simultaneous board game tournaments held over the course of 9 days. I love it. So I fly to a couple other board game tournaments as well. And so I have in fact started online leagues, the Meeple leagues you talk about. Go to meepleleague.com.
Yeah.
And we run. Ongoing leagues for 5 different games through the ages. I think is the one you played in.
Yeah. So to become meepleleague.com.
Meepleleague.com.
And
for the Magic Super Leagues, you can go to vintagesuperleague.com is the website for that.
Right.
The best way to follow that though is just follow me on Twitter.
Okay.
I'm always talking about what I'm doing on Twitter. So R Buehler on Twitter.
R Buehler, free Randy on Twitter. R Buehler on Twitter. Right. Excellent. Wow. Yeah. You got a final question for our guest, or Emma, or
games. Yeah. Any games in particular, board games that you do competitively, or your favorite, like 1 or 2 games that.
Through the Ages is probably the one I've enjoyed the most over the years. Yeah. Agricola is another game I've really enjoyed over the years.
2 of my favorites, there.
Those are the 2 best. Lately, I've been playing New Frontiers and Underwater Cities. I think
cool.
The 2 new ones I've enjoyed the most.
Nice.
I've actually been branching out into war games.
Oh.
It's like I play a lot of 4-player Euros.
It happens.
Just getting into the war games, it's like. The first board games I ever played, my dad is from Baltimore. And so Avalon Hill is from Baltimore. He had a 1961 original printing of D-Day, which is literally the first game that ever had a hex map. It's just chits moving around, but it's a hex map. And so,
that's right. Kriegspell was on a square grid.
Yeah, exactly. So this is the first ever hex map board game, and he and I played that when I was a teenager, and I took it to college, played against my college buddies. So I've sort of gone back full circle, and I'm playing some of the war games. They're card driven
Welcome
now.
back.
Yes.
Welcome back. Yes.
Awesome,
I was a big Third Reich player, Panzer Blitz, Panzer Leader, Squad Leader.
For the People is the one I've been playing. The Civil War game, card driven war game for the People has been great lately.
Well, wow. What a story. What a day. What a show. That's fantastic.
I love talking about Magic. I can keep going.
Yeah. Thank you so much for being our guest.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This was fun.
Yeah, so that's it for another episode of Fireside with Peter Adkison. Thank you to Emma Larkins, my co-host for this show, and for the rest of the season. Yeah, yes,
I'll be here.
Yes, and thanks to our guest, Randy Buehler. Thanks to Will Geisling, our technical director, and this week Dominic Lewis stepped in for Derek Gooder, who's on vacation. Dominic was our producer. I think he did fine. I mean, never think
I feel produced.
I guess we'll know when we go to watch it later.
Yeah.
And thanks to Gen Con TV for being our host. Thanks to Chaldea Studios for streaming our streaming site. And we will not have a show next week. Not a live show. We will probably do a rerun. We have season 2. Now we can have a rerun inventory we can do. So our next live show will be on October 2nd. Our guest will be Ellie Wood. She worked in the sales department. She was Ellie Howe back in the day. She worked front lines of sales, dealing with distributors through all the madness. So very different types of stories, but excellent, wonderful. I can't wait to see her. And that'll be on October 2nd. Between now and then, be sure and check out our other shows here on Gen Con TV. We have the Brothers Murph on Mondays at 5 p.m. Pacific time, when we have Table Takes on Fridays at 11 a.m. Pacific time. All right, thank you also, most of all, to you for tuning in, watching, please plug us on the socials, and I hope you enjoyed the show. All right. Yay. Bye.